All right, so there used to be, back when I was in like high school or something, a meme format where it would be like a numbered list and it'd be steps to do things. It would be like, you'd have step 1, do something, innocuous. Step 2, a little bit different. And step 3 was always question mark, question mark, question mark. And then step 4 was profit. And the idea was basically you didn't really have a plan, but it was always, we'll figure it out. So Dalinar, at the end of this book, has a scene where step 1 beats the king's ass. Steps 2 threatens to kill the king. Steps 4 demands to become the commander-in-chief. Step 5 question mark, question mark, question mark. Step 6 profit. Also tell the king that he's sleeping with his mom.
Also that.
Yeah. So that is, clearly he didn't really have an idea what he was doing, but he was having an adult hypertension. It was pretty good.
I'm pretty sure he had a pretty set list of things that he wanted to do.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, hello and welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide to Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. I'm your co-host with a crab allergy, not a joke, Nick Gorman.
That's funny.
What?
And I'm your co-host, AJ Gorman. I get the joke that you're allergic to shellfish and crumblings and yeah.
Yeah, and everything on Roshar's crab.
If it's a Cosmere joke, you have a 50-50 chance of me actually getting it. Anything else on the internet?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So today is our post-read episode for The Way of Kings, Book 1 in the Stormlight Archive. And then you wanted to tailor our focus a little bit on this episode.
Yeah, so Way of Kings is big.
It's like, how many pages is it? You were reading the paperback.
It's real big.
Okay, real big.
It's real big.
I guess I've got it right here, right in front of me.
And you were kind of joking with me about how long our post-read episode was going to be, if it was going to be like an hour and a half. And I'm like, well, I'm not even sure if we could cut it down to 3 hours. So I think we're going to kind of split this into parts 1 and 2.
What, do you think this is like an international version of the book? A lot of the international versions of the books got split up into parts 1 and 2, right? So you get...
Right.
Anyway. Or Leatherbound?
So the thing that I want to start with today is, I used to just read for fun, and I just used to not pay attention, and I would just be like, oh, I got what I got out of it and not really thinking too hard. And that kind of changed when I started reading Brandon Sanderson, and I realized that all of the things that I learned in English class about foreshadowing and dramatic irony
Really does a lot of foreshadowing.
And all of that, I thought stuff that I would probably never use after high school. I appreciate those skills now.
Yeah.
I still never learned to distrust a narrator, but they did try to teach me that in high school.
Yeah.
So anyways, I wanted to take back and, not take for granted the fact that there is an extremely dense setting and world that we should kind of make sure that we have a good foundation for moving forward.
So is today's episode, are we focusing on the setting in the world? Is that all we're going to do today? Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
A little bit. We'll talk about some characters.
Okay.
We're going to kind of see where our conversation takes us.
Okay.
But I got notes. I've got 4 pages of notes.
Well, I've got notes as well, but, they're not about that. So, all right.
One of the first things that I wanted to talk about was kind of the theme of the book. So Brandon does... I know that's not what...
So that's not what you just said?
That's all right. Because I'm using the theme of the book to help kind of summarize the book. Which is why I wanted to start there. Brandon does kind of hit us over the head and uses a couple different characters to really spell out this theme of the book. So I'll just go with a quote here. I think this is something that Dalinar thinks. Did one choose the best position to weather storms, or did one seize the high ground? And I think, and it's definitely kind of the theme of this book. Do you hunker down and kind of keep what you have, or do you go for more? So this kind of goes through all of our major characters in one way or another. So Kaladin has to decide whether he wants to kind of keep his head down, just live out his life as a slave or a bridgeman, what have you, or try to not only survive but thrive. Dalinar has to choose whether to kind of, take everybody else's word for it that he's going crazy and abdicate, or does he choose to take the risk and believe in himself that he's actually getting visions from the Almighty and really go for it?
And this plays out in multiple layers in Dalinar's story, right? Because he's also, trying to, he's hunkering down and really taking over the day-to-day operations of the Shattered Plains, right? they talk about multiple times how he's not really winning any gem hearts because he's, all of his men are out patrolling for bandits. He's, police, he's got the de facto police crew, right? Like, and it's taken a toll on his troops' morale, right?
Yeah, we don't see a whole lot of that particularly. More just Adolin.
Okay, I thought it came up several times. It was sort of one of the things about why Adolin was so prickly.
Yeah.
And why Dalinar seemed a little bit beaten down at the beginning.
Yeah. And then not to forget Shallan. Shallan has to decide if she's actually going to, steal Yasna's soul caster or give up those plans, throw her lot in with Yasna and just abandon her brothers and kind of fend for herself.
Yasna or Yasna? Yas. Nah.
However you want to say it. It does. So I have struggled. I struggle to spell things, so it does actually help with the Stormlight that it's like, well, most names are supposed to be somewhat symmetrical, disregarding H's of all things.
They get a cheat letter.
Yeah. And that's much easier to kind of figure out for me in a written text than it was audio.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, well, that's because none of the names. How the hell do you spell Tvlakov?
No idea.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, and then so that's kind of the theme and a rough summary of what our major characters are doing. I wanted to go over some kind of vocabulary and make sure that we kind of understand things.
But that's the only theme we're gonna talk about, because there's a whole lot of persistence in the face of adversity. There's all this, and this book in particular is really focused on Kaladin's depression. Right? And him breaking through that.
Yeah, I have that notes for a different episode, but if you want to talk about it.
I'm just like, well, hold on.
It's hard to fit everything in.
Well, I mean, yeah. I don't know. This, each of the Stormlight books has a focus character. Like, there's several main characters, and this is Kaladin's book. All the flashbacks are from Kaladin's point of view. And, you'll still see a lot of Kaladin in the later books in the series, but this is his. In a way that Words of Radiance is Shallan's book, in the way that Oathbringer is Dalinar's book, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
I want to take a step back.
Yeah.
Now that we've done that teaser on themes, I just want to do a quick thing of dark eyes versus light eyes. It really is kind of that simple. If your eyes are dark, you're in a lower class. If your eyes are lighter, you're in a higher rank.
Well, it's more nuanced than that, right? Because even within that, there's multiple castes where it's Dawn or Non, depending on whether you're light eyes or dark eyes.
I've never noticed that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, so they have a rigid formal caste system, and within, your certain eye color, you can buy your way up or, be disgraced your way down. It's if I don't know, I see that and I'm like, I sometimes go back and forth with how honor is presented in these books, but it's like, oh yeah, no, that very rigid caste system. It's like, and where you need to maintain your honor to maintain your place in society. It's like, oh, okay, I do see that. It's not, I don't like it, but yeah.
Okay, and then just to point out, Kaladin's family is of the fourth non, or I don't know.
I thought they were first or second, right? Because they were.
Oh, maybe they're the second.
I was about to say, because they were right on the border where like it was feasible for him to marry into a Light Eyes family and have kids who would be, Light Eyes.
Yeah, so he's a high ranking.
Yes.
His family was a high ranking Dark Eyes family.
Yeah, but that still makes them peasants, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Wit does comment that, basing society off of eye color, some people may think it's strange, but he had seen...
Yeah, he'd seen worse.
Yeah, he'd seen a bunch of different ways that all seem nonsensical, and he's like, it's just no worse than any of the others. It's hard for me to kind of understand basing it off people's eyes colors, because I don't notice people's eyes color.
Right, but I mean, I don't know if you noticed as much, but people don't seem to react to skin color on Roshar in the same way that we do on, in America, right?
Right.
And that's the point.
I know. It's just hard because I'm just like, well, I never look at people's eye color.
Not that intensely. And,
Yeah. Unless those crazy people, like especially women, and they put okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who put, eyeliner on and like really highlight their eye color, but it's like super.
And colored contacts, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's the point, is that it is supposed to be a little silly, right? but also you can tell the parallel with, real historical life.
Yeah. Moving on, there are 3 moons on this planet, and it is mentioned kind of sprinkled throughout the book. It doesn't really matter.
They're different colors.
They are different colors, small, medium, and large, but it doesn't really have an impact on the story.
To me, it helps with the alien vibe of the planet, right? This is not like Earth. This is not an Earth analog.
Yeah. Speaking of which, seasons do not rotate predictably on Roshar either.
Yeah, and you'd think that comes up more often than it does.
Yes, you'd think. But sometimes, we actually get caught up in the actual story and not the setting. So seasons change every few weeks, but they don't normally know what season's coming next.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about the difference between Radiants and Heralds. You want to take a stab at that?
No, because I'm trying to think. It's like, well, what can I say that's not a spoiler, right?
Well, I think it's fair to say that Heralds came first.
Right. Yeah. And like the prelude, the one with Kalak and, on that looking back to the desolation. Yeah, the one that you always say to skip. That's from the point of view of a herald, right? And the heralds are prominent religious figures in Vorinism, which is the religion that I think all of our main characters at this point in the book, in the series, are.
Yes.
So in their, as it's structured in the religion, there's the Almighty, who's their god, who, gave Dalinar his visions. And the Almighty had 10 heralds.
Who were human and then raised up to be immortal.
Kind of, yeah. And they would, return with the desolations. They would lead the war against the Voidbringers. They had their own sets of magic powers and stuff like that. We're going to find out a lot more about that as the series goes on. But then, separate from the heralds, there were the Knights Radiant, who, I guess
they were kind of not really disciples, but they were kind of formed.
They were like super soldiers. But as far as we know in this, like, they were virtuous. And then the heralds disappeared to go fight the Voidbringers for eternity. And then, the Knights Radiants left behind and were, aids to humanity. And then at one point they walked away from their oaths and they fell in disgrace.
Yeah, so that's why everybody poo-poos the Radiants, because they betrayed mankind.
That's right. They're the lost Radiants.
Yes, so even though the Radiants kind of followed the Heralds, the Radiants are thought poorly of, while the Heralds are still thought well of.
Yeah, they're revered, and other nations consider the heralds to be their gods, things like that.
Religion splinter, yeah.
Yeah, if you read the prelude, like I suggest, you would also notice that what the reason why the Radiants are lost, why they're so disgraced, is the exact same thing that the heralds actually did. Right, they walked away. So that's a point of tension in from the series, from the back, within the setting. Right. And that will be explored more.
Okay. Since you brought it up, the Vorin religion. This religion in its current form that like Dalinar and Kaladin follow.
Oh, do I need to get you a glove?
I won't show it on camera. How about
there we go. That's in the if we make a Patreon page, that'll be subscribers only. Wink. Only hands. Wink.
Okay. Anywho, Vorin religion in its current form, the way that you kind of practice this religion is you worked with the Ardents, the kind of priest-like role, to choose a attribute of the Almighty, a calling and a glory that you're following. So you work hard at your profession, and then in living up to that ideal. So there's 2 parts, a calling and a glory. So you pick your profession and then an attribute of the Almighty to emulate.
Right. So I mean, the Christianity analog would be their callings. No, wait, what is their calling and their glory? So their calling is like their vocation, right? So what do you want to do with your life? And then their glory is basically what virtues do they want to embody while they do it.
Except they only pick one.
And they only pick one, which is a little different.
So, and then you work with the Ardents, the priest-like figures, to kind of set goals, mini goals, to meet those and kind of progress.
Yep.
So it's a very kind of personalized religion, tailored kind of to your individual, needs and stuff.
The Ardents, can I go on a tangent about Ardents?
Of course.
So they are priests, like priests and priestesses, like AJ said, but they're also slaves, and they're all owned by the king, right? And they serve the needs primarily of the light eyes. And they mostly leave the dark eyes more or less alone.
Them every now and then.
Right. But like, it's not explicit, right? Like, they do like generic preaching type of stuff to the dark eyes, and we don't see a whole lot of that on screen.
I don't think we see any of it on screen.
But like what we're talking about with choosing a calling, choosing a glory, things like that, and like working with, like, that's for the nobility.
True.
Yeah. So you'll see like Adolin and Shallan talk about that, but for Kaladin, it's more like,
Right. Anyways, in some ways, I kind of like that idea of, having it a little bit more personalized, setting goals and going through it that way. But definitely parts of it, not so great. Like the fact that you're ignoring an entire class of people, and the Ardents are slaves. So definitely issues.
But we can talk more about the Ardentia as slaves later on, I think. Because they're very different from like the bridge crews, right? And they're very different from the chattel slaves, like, Kaladin, what we first see Kaladin, right? They are treated much better. Like there's different castes of slaves. And like there was some discussion about, Renarin, one of the High Prince's sons, joining the Ardents. Right?
Yeah.
So it's not a dishonorable sort of there's different types of slavery in this book.
Everything's complicated.
It's complicated, but it makes it feel like a well-developed world, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not, it's not like there's one monoculture that does that the whole planet does this one. No, there's a lot of different countries, a lot of people, a lot of different customs, and it's all kind of a messy. It's mess.
Right, and there are 5 major Vorin.
The world is a mess, and Dalinar just needs to rule it.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so there are 5 major Vorin kingdoms. Yakaved, that's where Shallan is from. Alethkar, which is where Kaladin and Dalinar are from. Kharbranth. So Kharbranth is just a city. It's more like a city-state rather than an actual country.
Right, but that's also where we first see Shallan and Yasna and Taravangian.
Yeah, and then I believe Natin was one.
Complicated. I don't remember. Oh.
And by the time our story takes place, Natin was destroyed.
There's new Nat.
But anyways.
I mean, the 3 Vorin kingdoms that really
that you need to pay attention to
are, Alethkar, Yakaved, and Kharbranth. I forget if Thalin, do they count? Like
I think so, yeah.
Because I know they're less Vorin than some of the other ones.
Yeah, they have. It's a little, Thalin is a little different.
And so the Thalins, you'll know by their long eyebrows that they tuck behind their ears, and like they're more of a mercantile governed society, and that's where the sailors that Shallan is with in the beginning of the book, those are Thalins, and so is the Stim and Risen from one of those interludes.
Yep. And then we should probably go over kind of the brief history of Roshar. It's confusing to understand.
30,000 foot view.
Yes, I mean, so there was existence.
No, I would say no spoilers before, for after Way of Kings.
No, I'm taking it. I'm literally taking a page out of Way of Kings.
Okay.
So the first thing on there is the expulsion. So the loss of the Tranquil Nine Halls.
Yep. And those, and the time before that is the Shadow Days, where, there is no recorded history. All they know was war and everything lost.
Oh, so I think the expulsion is a single point in time, and then after the expulsion was the desolations.
Yep.
Where it's just war after war after war.
And the last one was called Aharietium.
Did you know Aharietium is a Hebrew word?
I did not know that. Doesn't surprise me. There's,
Well, I thought it was a word that Brandon made up, but I'm just ignorant. So it's Hebrew for the last of days.
And it fits.
Which is also why Aharietium is called the last desolation.
Yeah.
Supposedly, and that was the defeat of the Voidbringers. Surrounding that is kind of when King Noadon was living, because King Noadon kind of was ruling after that. Was during the last desolation and after.
Do we know that?
Yes.
Okay.
We do.
Okay.
After that was, the Radiants were still around. And then we have the Recreants, which is the fall of the Knights Radiant.
The betrayal.
And that brings us to the last kind of major point in the 1,000-foot view is the hierocracy.
Yep.
And that is the failure of Vorinism.
And that's where the Ardent and we don't know much about it, but somehow the Ardents tried to take over the world, and then they became slaves as a result.
Yeah, the religion completely reorganized.
Yep.
To try to get them out of politics and away from taking over the world. Allegedly, the result was trying to separate state and church and state. There we go. That's the term. And for all those people out there who don't care about war and armor and everything, pauldrons, that's the armor for the shoulder area. So if you've watched The Last Airbender, Avatar The Last Airbender, when Aang and Sokka are making fun of the old Fire Nation uniforms, and they're just like poking at it's the pauldrons that they're poking at because they're too pointy. So just wanted to share.
Okay, yeah.
That I picked up some new vocab. Pauldrons. That's what pauldrons are. The shoulder area.
Play Diablo 2 like the rest of us nerds.
No thanks.
Okay.
I'll stick with Avatar The Last Airbender. Thanks.
It's fair.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the prologue. So in the prologue, Zeth kills
Son Villano, truthless of Shinovar, wore white on the day he was to kill a king.
And he killed King Gavilar of Alethkar.
Yep.
So that's kind of a problem on a lot of different issues. So Alethkar was 10 independent kingdoms before Gavilar came along.
Do we want to talk about the in-between between the hierarchy and the unification of Alethkar?
Sure,
Gavilar?
Go for it.
Because you've heard it a couple times here, but it becomes more and more relevant as the series goes on. But Alethkar is a very war-focused society in particular. They honor their soldiers above everyone else. But it's always divided and unifying and dividing again. And the
land as a whole,
the country as a whole. And the most recent time it was unified was under a king called the Sunmaker. And so you'll see his name come up over and over again. And he's the ancestor for Gavilar, and sort of the reason why Gavilar
inspiration.
He had a claim. That's sort of the reason why Gavilar thought he had a claim to the throne, was he could trace his ancestry back to the Sunmaker. Now, so could all the other high princes, but whatever.
So Gavilar, after the Sunmaker died, the kingdom fell apart again into 10 into 10 separate kingdoms.
Yep.
So King Gavilar came along before the events of the story, and with Dalinar's help,
Dalinar and Sadeas,
forged the 10 independent kingdoms into one unified Alethkar nation.
And then he died.
And
so now we're sort of in a precarious, is it going to fall apart or not situation.
Yeah, because the kingdoms still operate very much like 10 independent kingdoms. I mean, we see Kaladin, when he's in Amran's army, he's fighting against other Alethi.
Yeah.
Which is just mind-boggling.
It's not like they're in a civil war. That's just how they do things.
They just do border skirmishes.
Yeah, that would be like if California and Nevada just, started shooting each other for no reason. It's cash.
And no one really, no one's going to go over and stop them.
This is right and good. This is just.
Perhaps other people in our crazy real world can better relate to this. It's growing up in privileged America. It's hard for me. So yeah, when you have, your unifying entity die, it's a very precarious time. So what's kind of keeping them united at the moment is what they're calling the Vengeance Pact. So all of the princes, all of the heads of the princedoms, gave an oath, signed a paper. I don't know.
Well, they didn't sign anything because they don't read or write because they're men. So they definitely swore a verbal oath.
They could have put glove pairs down.
Yeah, whatever. But yes, they all agreed, they're going to go to war to kill the Parshendi, to get back, to get vengeance.
So they're all there together on the Shattered Plains, but they are all kind of isolated from one another. They all have their own independent war camps, and the only place where they really kind of interact between different kingdoms is surrounding the king's palace, which he has a palace on the Shattered Plains in the middle of the war, but
Well, I think, geography-wise, it's also important to note that the Shattered Plains are not in Alethkar.
Yes.
It's a separate, country. I don't know. It's the ruins.
So they have the unclaimed hills, which no one really occupies, but then they have this Shattered Plains area, which is also kind of unclaimed, except the Alethi are now there, and also the Parshendi.
Right. And I think it's worth noting that the reason why is because they are so far east. They're about as close as you can get to the origin of storms, the high storms, that it is, it is inhospitable.
Yeah, high storms only go from
right.
Start at the origin and only go one direction.
And it's something that comes up a little bit in this book, but mostly later on in the series. Like, they really have a hard time getting food.
Yes. Okay. But kind of going back to Gavilar and that whole mess, everything's very fragile. A big kind of point that you're supposed to get from, the prologue, but also Dalinar's reflection is that Dalinar was drunk off his ass when Gavilar was assassinated.
Yep.
And that's a big kind of...
Well, he blames himself very much for that as well, right? And that's part of why he's, so big on, there's a lot of reasons why he's so big on the Alethi codes of war, right? But one of those is, a couple reasons are that, Gavilar was suddenly interested in the codes of war before he died. So,
And told Dalinar to follow the codes.
Right. But then also one of the things the codes forbids is being drunk during warfare. And Dalinar, between feeling guilty about being drunk, about letting his brother die, he latches onto that. It's a reason for him to stay sober.
The other thing kind of to make sure to note in the prologue is that Gavilar gave Szeth a sphere that kind of it seemed to glow somehow with a light that was black. So unfortunately, that little detail is not going to build on itself till like 3 books from now.
Foreshadowing.
So
we'll get there when we get there.
So hang on to that. Don't forget it. But also...
And they'll remind you about it when it comes relevant again. It's all good.
So it is important. It's not forgotten about. It just takes a while to get there. And then Gavilar also says, tell my brother he must find the most important words a man can say. Which is the other, and that is actually a phrase from The Way of Kings, which is why Dalinar is also, he's got the codes that he is kind of driving his life. It's the book also is driving his life. And then he's got these visions from the Almighty. And kind of those 3 things are separate, but also somewhat related, as Adolin points out in the story. Okay, going back to Alethkar and Gavilar and stuff. So Gavilar's assassinated, and his son Elhokar becomes king. Elhokar's kind of a terrible king.
Yeah, kind of a fuck up.
Well, yeah, he's not a bad person.
Debatable.
He's not a horrible person. He has some growth to do, but he's not like rotten to his core.
Yeah, I think of him as like a man-child, right? He's used to being coddled his entire life, right? And he's able to be manipulated by the people around him because of it.
Yep. I don't know if it's because of it, but people have definitely noticed that they can manipulate him.
Yeah, and
including, Dalinar manipulates him.
Yep.
So yeah, he's kind of a bad king. Navani knows it. Dalinar won't admit it. His love for Elhokar is definitely kind of wrapped up in his guilt and love for his brother. So that's kind of tough to untangle, but...
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like there are certain times in this book where you get the feeling that Dalinar loves Elhokar more than his own children, right? And I think he would say that explicitly.
I don't know if he would say that explicitly. He has definitely said it inexplicably. Yeah.
Huh. Unexplicitly?
Unexplicitly, yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, Elhokar's a bad king. He doesn't really think through his actions. He doesn't really kind of have the foresight to play the political games that Alethi is known for. He just keeps putting Dalinar in these horrible positions, not realizing that saying that there was an assassin under the, when he was under the care of Dalinar would put suspicion on Dalinar, which is just like, that's not even that hard to figure out. That's not 10 layers deep. That's like the first layer. So he's not great. And, he still has people trying to manipulate him, Sadeas being the big one. And then he also has daddy issues because everybody thinks that, or Elhokar thinks that everybody's comparing him to Gavilar, which of course they are, which has got to be frustrating and not a lot of pressure for him, but also dwelling on that is not particularly helpful. And it all plays into his paranoia.
Yep. So,
but we can talk about his paranoia in another episode.
There's a few Easter eggs about some of the details about his paranoia that are
that we'll talk about in another episode.
Yep.
All right, let's talk a little bit further about the war. So we already talked about the Shattered Plains. So the Shattered Plains, it's well known that the Shattered Plains was where the kingdom of Natan existed. Something happened. It's never really explained until much later, of what happened to Natan. All we just know is that there was a period of time where it was a bustling.
It was a whole kingdom.
It was a whole kingdom. And then after some point in time, it was shattered.
A barren wasteland with a bunch of chasms.
Yep. And I had always listened to the audiobook. So I always thought that the High Prince's camps were all like clustered together in like a group.
Oh, they make a crescent shape, a half.
I never got that until this read.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's PDFs in it about it on Brando Sando's website.
To bother to actually go there
Yeah, you can see, and yeah. So yes.
Like, it makes sense because they're all trying to get different advantages to different plateaus and stuff, but I just never really thought about it.
Yeah.
But because it also makes it, like, hard to travel, like, if you're on the far reaches and...
Yeah, I was about to say, there's
you don't have access to Elhokar in his quote-unquote palace.
Yep.
I think it just further illustrates that they don't really have any connection between the camps.
Yeah. Yeah, they are 10 independent city-states. Right, that are separate from the 10 independent, nation states right back home.
Right.
So there's layers of, I don't want to say federalism, but there's layers of chaos.
Yeah, and as Navani kind of points out, anybody who's of importance is at the Shattered Plains.
Yep.
Anybody who's left back in the actual Alskar land is just plebs.
No, there's Light Eyes there too.
There are Light Eyes there, but like of no real import.
Yeah, well, yeah. They're right.
They've just been left behind as caretakers.
Yes.
It's also worth pointing out that though the Alethi have been fighting for 6 years with the Parshendi, 6 or 7, they don't know anything really or much about the Parshendi.
No. Well, and they beat you over the head with this observation, but it stopped being a real war for the Alethi. It started becoming more of a game or a contest.
I don't know if it was ever really a war. I think it was always just kind of started as a contest.
No. There was a one-liner, maybe it was a paragraph. There was a short little bit where Dalinar was the one who came up with the plan to basically just, besiege them and take away all the gem hearts so that way they can't grow any more food.
Well, they don't actually know that.
They don't, but they do know that that was their plan, is they needed the gem hearts to power their soul casters to
make food.
And they knew that the Parshendi also desperately wanted those gem hearts as well.
Yeah.
Right? So either way, there definitely was an aside at one point about, well, Dalinar's the one who came up with this plan, right?
Right, but
to lay siege.
But that was the original plan. I don't think there was ever a time where any of the princedoms worked together to assault the Parshendi. Yeah, because Elhokar makes a claim during the chasm hunt, the chasm feed hunt, that he's like, I claim your life. They will see their gods crushed just as they will see their king dead at my feet. I defy you. And it's just like, they don't have a king.
They don't have a king.
They don't have a king, and the chasm fiends are not their gods. Like, this is all...
They don't know that yet.
They don't know that yet, but just don't pay attention to anything Elhokar says, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Just to say.
His feelings don't care about your facts, okay?
What an age. What an age we are living in. I don't particularly care for battle scenes.
Interesting choice of books to have a podcast about, dear. There's an awful lot of fights.
But there are an awful lot of fight scenes, particularly Mistborn and Stormlight.
The ones that have the most books published.
But I do appreciate that Brandon does make a point to not just do a straight battle scene. He also tries to mix in character development and kind of stuff outside of the fighting. Mixes that in. So that's good for me, because I don't need to know you swung your sword from left to right.
It's never just a fight scene.
Yeah.
Right? And it's never, and that's not just a Brando Sando thing. Like, it's, it's like sometimes, yes, they're there for tension and drama and stuff like that. But it's also, Dalinar feeling the thrill again, feeling like a real Alethi. He's embodying his, national whateverness, right? Frankly, rage and bloodthirst. And then he suddenly feels it retreat, and he's overcome with, disgust Like that's Dalinar's character arc for this book in a nutshell.
So it's character arc. It's also Easter eggs for things to come. So it's like, even though I hate battle scenes, it's like I have to pay attention to what's happening, even minute details in the battle scenes, because there's
What
so
about
much
that soldier's
in them.
viscera? Gosh, sorry.
Okay, so that's most of the stuff on the surface. I do want to put in a quick note here that Wit, the character Wit,
Also called Hoyd.
also called Hoyd, he is a character that is seen throughout the Cosmere. And I believe this is the very first published work where Wit or Hoyd was actual, like,
More of a character
more
rather
of a
than a cameo. Yeah.
So that is worth noting, that if you think you're like, if you're worried about being lost with this Wit character, just know that this is like the first introduction, and still there's not a whole lot of explanation of who this person is and what they're doing and their motivations and all that.
Well, can we get a little metatextual about it?
Sure.
Right. So Hoyd is an interesting character in the fandom, but you know his roots as a character start in a D&D character that Brando played, right? And he got inserted in the Cosmere at first as like I'm just going to have a character named Hoyd and everything, right? And then he's taken on greater significance since then. But yeah, so he's supposed to be vague and mysterious and a little bit other. And we'll dig into that more as the series goes on, and then as the Cosmere goes on as well.
Yeah. But some things to note are that people always find something strange about him, because he is strange, and even off-putting about him, even if they like him. And good people, genuine people, tend to like him. For example, Renarin and Adolin like him.
Dalinar doesn't.
Dalinar comes around, but Sadeas does not.
Yeah.
That is kind of a theme that we see in this book and also in others.
Well, if you're going to have an author self-insert character and then somebody hates that character, they're probably not going to be a good guest. Indeed.
I do want to briefly mention a couple different groups that we see in this book.
Like secret societies?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
So the Ghost Bloods are named in the book.
Yep.
So they are the group of people that kind of gave Shallan's father the Soulcaster. They also
We don't know.
tried to murder Yasna.
We don't know much about their underlying motivations yet, but they have a symbol associated with like 3 interlocking diamonds, right?
Another society is, we don't have, the name has not been revealed, but there's another group that is associated with the Teravangian. So they are the group of people that are killing people to get more of those death rattles and to have control of the death.
Right. And so like, and we haven't seen too much of that society on screen, except that, there was somebody else who was giving Zeth orders on behalf of Teravangian. And, Teravangian takes Zeth into a behind a secret whatever, and, gets sort of a look in the back rooms of the hospitals where they're, killing people rather than trying to save them. And that's not a one-person job. There's a whole organization there supporting that.
Yep. So that is a completely separate group.
Uh-huh.
Separate from those both are Wit. Wit is kind of one man unto himself.
He has allies and friends.
He has allies and friends. It's easier to think of him as a completely separate.
He's a wild card.
He's a wild card. And then there's a fourth kind of group that we see in this book called the 17th Shard.
We don't see them named.
We don't see them named, but the name's not really a giveaway. So those are the people in the interlude that are looking for Wit or Hoyd.
Yep. You left off a few.
Oh, go for it.
So we haven't seen the name described on screen yet, but there was another secret society that Amaran was a part of.
Oh, yeah.
And we see him talking a little bit about Ristaris, who's another member of that same secret society, right before he kills, betrays Kaladin and kills all those men. Yep. And as well, sort of connecting the dots here, Ristaris is another named figure in the prologue before Gavilar is assassinated. Gavilar thinks that Ristaris or maybe Thydakar was the one who did it. And so those are names associated with certain secret societies.
Yes. So if it seems like there's a lot of secret societies and it's hard to kind of figure out who is who and what is motivation, there's a lot. And yes, it is confusing at first.
You might say there's always another secret. And if you read Mistborn, that's a reference to Mistborn.
You didn't wink. There you go. I can't believe you didn't wink.
It's a premiere. We're an audio podcast first and foremost. Whatever.
I do have a note about Captain Tosbeck.
What about him? Huh?
So
In secret societies?
no, separate. Moving on.
Okay.
So moving on. I had not noticed this, or this line has new meaning now that I've finished the first arc. Captain Tosbeck says, even in a safe city like Carpronth hides dangers. Keep your wits about you.
Hey, that's our sign off.
Yes. So more foreshadowing and very likely advice to us as the readers.
Well, I mean, especially in this book, Shallan gets set upon by robbers, and then Yasna just murderizes them.
Yes. Is that a word?
It is now.
Murderizes?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound horrible.
She murders him to death.
Okay. All right. A few more notes. Let's talk about the prelude now.
Okay.
And that way I don't have to talk about it for the next several episodes.
No, you will. Definitely. Because we're not even getting into our cosmic connection stuff yet.
That's true. Okay.
Or we're leaving out a lot of the heavy foreshadowing stuff, right? We talked about that being another episode that we're going to plan on.
Okay. So if you read the prelude, or even if you didn't, here's what happened. It is from the perspective of a herald.
Collect.
He just got over a battle, and he's walking up to meet with the other heralds at the agreed upon spot. What he finds there is just a single herald,
Jezrien. Spelled with a J. Good luck finding out where.
And Jezrien tells him, we're all done. We're not going to be heralds anymore. Like, we're going to stop.
Well, is that what he says? Because I thought it started with Collect saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't go back. And then Jezrien saying, yep, none of us can.
Yeah, none of us are going back.
Well,
there's one dude who's back there already, and we're just going to leave him there.
Better that one man should suffer than 10.
And then the question was, well, what are we going to tell everybody? And the answer was, we're just going to tell them we won.
Yep.
And walk away.
Yep.
So you should be horrified that these herald, these kind of religious supreme being figures, abandoned one of their own, and they abandoned their
comrade.
Their blades, actually. So there were 9 blades that were left to kind of in the rock there.
Honor blades.
And the promise that they made that they were kind of breaking in doing this was called the Oath Pact.
Oath Pact.
Sorry, I can't pronounce anything. And this is not common knowledge for the characters in our story, but it is something that we learn as readers.
I was about to say, it's like I said, it's a big source of dramatic irony and tension that you as the reader should know as you're learning about this world and the place of the Vorinism and the herald in it, is that they're worshipped all over the world and they're liars.
Mm-hmm. And they're immortal beings, so they're not dead.
Well, yeah. Kind of stretches, it kind of depends on your definition of immortal. Because, like Collect says, dying was never pleasant.
Yeah, so they
do die.
They do die, but they're
just get better.
But anyway, they're still alive. Just to connect the dots a little bit further, that prelude was the Battle of Aharietium.
Yep.
That was the final battle.
Yep.
So that's the prelude. And that took me probably 5 rereads to get to that level of understanding.
I mean,
I'm a little thick-headed.
Okay, okay. We definitely pick up on different details.
Yes, we do. Indeed, we do.
Because, I thought it was pretty, okay. Oh, there was a really bad one that the Herald walked away from afterwards. And then later on, talk about Aharietium, the last desolation. Hey, got it.
Okay. A couple other mechanics just to have in the back of your mind. When people die and they kind of say something unexpectedly, those are called what the fandom, what people in the story call death rattles. I don't really want to go into the death rattles too much in this episode. I don't think that we have a complete understanding of those death rattles. We know some things.
Well, some people treat them as prophetic. Some people treat them as nonsense.
Yeah.
There's, there are readers out there who go through and overanalyze them for different shades of meaning and trying to figure out what's going to come next in the Cosmere. I personally think that they should be taken with a grain of salt.
I don't think they're...
Yeah.
I think they're actually information from the past. I don't think they're information from the future.
We can talk about that in another episode, I think, when we can get into the, I don't really want to go through and dissect each one, but, they're not all the same.
Yeah. No, they're not all the same. Calling back to the beginning of this episode when we were talking about the symmetry of people's names, the book titles are like that.
Pause. It's symmetry. Symmetry is worshipped in Vorin. It's a divine trait in Vorinism, right? It's something that, at least in Alethkar and the Vorin kingdoms, they associate with godliness. And there's even a form of poetry called a ketek, where it's the same words. It's got a dividing line where it's the same forwards and backwards, right? It's a symmetrical poem, but it's got a different meaning. And was this the book that ended with Ketek?
Did.
Okay, I was about to say, because I'm like, I remember reading, but I've been reading a lot of Cosmere lately. So, yeah.
So the title of the books are symmetric, but not perfectly.
Well, initials of the book.
The initials of the book. Sorry.
Initials of the book form a Ketek.
Yes. You have, for example, the second book of this is Words of Radiance.
Well, you've got The Way of Kings.
W-O-T. W-O-K.
W-O-K. Words of Radiance, W-O-R. Oathbringer, O. And then you've got Rhythm of War, R-O-W. And then...
Which is the backwards of...
Yep. And then Wind and Truth, which the working title was Knights of Wind and Truth. So it would have been more symmetrical, but that was... Anyway.
It was a big bombshell on the fandom when it was announced that it was not going to be completely symmetrical.
I mean, it was also a big thing when he announced the working title was going to be Knights of Wind and Truth, because it was like, it's going to be symmetrical. Whoa! It's like, whatever. I get it.
Okay, we need to take a left turn.
Okay.
Because there's something that deeply and truly bothers me about this series. Okay, I worked as a lighting designer for 7 years.
Yep.
Okay, and the use of Stormlight and the different colors of Stormlight.
They're mixing colors, huh? Do you like when
just mind fucking me?
Do you like when people mix different color temperatures?
I don't.
In the same space? Huh. Shucks.
Don't.
Dang.
But I just, like, as a lighting designer, I'm just, like, horrified by these settings. Like, this aspect of the setting.
I mean, they're...
Okay. Just, I want you to take a moment.
Yeah.
Everybody's, like, dying for Brandon's works to be adapted to, like, TV screen or movie screen, right? Okay?
Opinions vary.
If that ever happens...
You're gonna die. You're not gonna be able to watch it.
No, if that ever happens, there is no freaking way that they are actually going to do different colored Stormlight.
No, it'd be CGI stuff.
Even so, just think about it. They talk all the time about, like, walking into the room that is, like, lit with different colors.
Yeah.
Okay? So you're going to be watching this fantasy epic, and it's going to look like a club rave scene.
Like a kaleidoscope. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but it's also a little bit darker than that, especially at certain times, because the Stormlight only slowly leaks away, and then it only reinfuses with the high storms, which aren't very predictable. They're kind of predictable, but not really. So
this aspect is never gonna fly if they adapt it.
You should watch Arcane, League of Legends on Netflix. That's good, and it's got a little bit of the dark and dingy, but also with the multicolored.
I mean, even if they keep it, they're just gonna have, like, white general lighting everywhere, and then they might have, like, a little CGI, like, pop of color around each sphere.
Well, and I'm wondering,
it's not gonna go down the way that Brandon wrote it.
Well, and I'm wondering how strongly colored the light is, right? Because I know, like, sometimes I picture it as, as light hitting, like, stained glass, where like, it's a very big, impact on the color. But it's like, well, I mean, you could just have, they can't always tell right away what color it is. Like, it could just be pretty faintly tinged.
Could. That's not how Brandon wrote it.
I mean, in Game of Thrones, they wrote it, Tyrion losing his whole face.
Okay.
His whole nose. So, I mean, and then, but then they're paying Peter Dinklage. You get, it was overstated. I'm just saying.
Let's drop some science here. Okay?
Adaptations need a little bit of adapting.
Okay, and I'm going to tell you that this Stormlight color thing, that's going to get chucked.
Okay, great.
So don't expect to see that.
All right, drop some science.
All right, let's drop some science.
Science.
You need 3 things to see, okay? You need your eye, the receptor.
Yeah.
Okay? You need an object, okay? And then you need light.
Yeah.
So light is going to come, hit the object, reflect, and hit your eye.
So this is magical light. I don't want to, in your parade or anything. I'm just saying that's like, well, it doesn't behave like light all the time, right?
Okay.
Well, because
How does it not behave like light?
Well, for one, when Stormlight infuses a sphere, it is infused in the sphere.
That's
like, in some ways, it's a little bit like, you could see the impact of, like, a bioluminescent kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's different, and there are certain things that help speed up or slow down how quickly it it leaks out.
But the stormlight still enables people to see objects. So there's still...
Like, it gives off light, yes, but the stormlight itself is not light. It's gas.
Okay, it gives off light.
Yeah.
Okay, it gives off colored light. So
no, it gives off light, and then the color of the gem filters it.
That statement is not backed by anything.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, because they talk about the inherent color in later books. I can't get into it now because I'll do spoilers for Rhythm of War.
Okay, even so. So it tints the light.
Yeah.
Okay? So light is composed of a variety of different colors, and when you combine...
I'm going to have to cut this whole section out.
When the light comes together, when you have different colors along the electromagnetic spectrum that come together, it creates white light. So when you have the white light, which is a mix of a bunch of different colors, and it hits an object, say it's a blue object, everything except for the blue portion of the light gets reflected from that object into your eye.
Yep.
So because there is blue that is missing from the light that's hitting your eye, that's why you see that object as blue.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's reflecting all the other colors.
No.
Or do I have that backwards?
You have it backwards.
I have it
backwards.
It's absorbing everything else. It's reflecting the blue.
There you go.
Okay. It just...
I took multiple classes on radiation in school, so I'm interested in this. Because I was about to say, it's like,
I had it backwards. Apologies. The point is, when you have just like a blue-only light, you see everything in shades of blue or darkness because it's not reflecting any light back to your eye.
And I mean, they talk about that where, Jasna prefers to study by the light of diamond stormlights.
So she can actually read things.
Because they're more clear. Whereas Shallan and Kaladin each, have various points in the book where they're studying by a light of a goblet of a hodgepodge of different spheres, and it's a little bit more chaotic, right?
Right. So I don't know if people are fully grasping how that is affecting how everything appears as you're reading this book. That when someone says that the room is lit only in garnets, everything appears red. Because there's no other colored light to reflect to let any other color appear.
Well, right, unless you've got multiple types of stormlit gems, so then you get the other colors.
Correct, but a lot of the times when Brandon describes a scene and he says the room was lit by this one color, I don't think people are realizing when they're reading it, it looks kind of like a club scene.
I suspect it's, so it'd be like all black lights.
Depending on what color, what gems are being used, but it's all one color.
Okay, I don't, but again, we don't know how strongly tinted they are, right? So
correct.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I don't know, whatever.
I don't know.
I'll imagine it the way I want to imagine it.
Brandon does so good, trying to bring real world physics and science into the things, but I don't think he really thought about color rendering when he thought about Stormlight and the different colors of Stormlight. And I just had to get that off my chest.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because as a public, we don't know enough about light and how we see colors and the effect that light has on our mood and the fact that different lights will render objects different colors depending on what light you're using. So something to chew on if you hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, audience, I want you to, go step inside the bit with me here. I'm trying very hard to keep a straight face, but I've also been told many times about how different food looks. You will never see a green light in a grocery store or in, a restaurant because it makes your food look terrible, right? And so I'm hearing this and then my mind is like, oh yeah, there's an awful lot of emerald bromes that are used to be decadently lit.
In grocery stores, they will actually use a light that has a lot more red content in it.
Yeah, here we go.
To make the meat look more red and more appetizing. So if you notice, you pick something out of the meat freezer case or the freezer case, and then you walk elsewhere in the store, it probably looks a little bit different.
Sorry.
Okay, let's be done.
Let's be done?
Let's be done.
Okay.
I've gotten it off my chest, so we're done.
We're done talking about lighting, or we're done talking about the settings?
I
We
think-
didn't talk about crabs at all.
Fine, talk about crabs.
Well, it's just everything on Roshar.
You don't need to know about crabs unless you want to get real deep.
My God, it's like, or you want to experience any of the memes, because
I'm not on the internet. I don't care.
okay, everything on Roshar is crabs, and you hear talk about kremlings. You know, they're just little crab creatures. You know, they range from small insect-like things to maybe medium-sized crab stuff to crabs the size of dogs, your axe hounds, to your giant great shells, which are Godzilla monster things. So everything on Roshar is crabs. Even the Parshendi grow shells.
But they call them kremlings.
What? Yeah, they're insect-like ones are kremlings.
Kremlings, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I always thought was started with a K,
No.
but no. I don't know why I thought it started with a K.
Yeah. Okay. So that, and we do want to talk about like the magic stuff and its impact on the setting. I know we talked a little bit in our pre-read episode about some of the stuff, magical things.
Let's save that for another episode.
Okay. Well, we've been Cosmere Casual. Thanks, audience, for audiencing to us. Our intro and outro music is licensed through Tribe of Noise. The artist is Ketsa, and the song is Odyssey. If you want to reach out to us, I said this before, I forgot. Our handles, email address, whatever, Cosmere Casual on Reddit, Instagram, whatever, cosmerecasual@gmail.com. Our Spotify link ends in Cosmere Casual. Yeah, that's us.
Feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe. We also have a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, I forgot we have a YouTube. That's where I post these videos too. Wow. And until next time.
Keep your wits about you.